We're in?
Yep.
We're in.
Welcome everyone again to White Belt MMA. This is Henok Elias and Rastin Karami. So we wanted to show you that we take the Wu-Tang Clan slogan, diversify your bonds to heart. So we are not stuck or trapped in the Ultimate Fighting Championship or UFC. We're going to be looking at all types of MMA organizations. We're going to be looking at left way and other bare knuckle varieties, discussing different philosophies throughout the course of this podcast.
But also discussing UFC.
But also UFC, because right now it's the GOAT. And like Israel Adesanya says, who we're going to get to, we're also interested in GOAT blood.
Goat blood.
But anyway, today
Some
we're
goat
going
blood
to...
is going to happen in September. Some goat blood's going to be going
What's
on.
happening in September?
The ADCC, baby.
Oh, well, so that's what we're going to talk about. So, good segue.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about grappling and then a kind of half-breed of grappling and striking known as combat jiu-jitsu, the brainchild of one Master Eddie Bravo. And then we're going to get into that UFC that you mentioned. So, Rusty, why don't you start us off with some big picture thoughts on ADCC while I pull up some of the names of the folks who have been invited and who've earned their keep to get in there.
Yeah, I think they announced a bunch of people. I think it's like half the brackets now. But I'm really happy with this current state that it is, like the competitors that are competing. And I'm excited for some people to be entering. I think Gordon Ryan is probably a big favorite to win everything. But it depends. It depends who fills it out, who fills out the group.
You mean in the absolute division or in his division?
I mean, I was trying to entice
you. Trying to say double gold like IBJJF? Like, what you talking about?
I was trying to entice you because I know you have a bias towards the heavier grapplers.
What do you mean?
Where you think the absolute of all absolutes, that's the highest level. So,
is that my singular opinion, or is it also why it's called absolute?
I think it's absolute because of the weight and not necessarily how good
it's the
you
absolute
are.
best.
Right.
Because they're the best.
You could say no. You could say
like people like Edwin Najimi, who used to fight at 66 kilograms. This time he's fighting at 77 kilograms. Has lost in his division 66, but won in the absolute, showing that his weight was irrelevant. His technique overcame everyone else, right?
Yeah, I think the technique. You could say that there's better technique in the smaller divisions and be completely accurate, and still say that those divisions would lose versus a larger person.
Then how do you explain a smaller guy? Does his technique just that much better than those other guys' technique?
I think it depends on the day. I don't think it's so absolute black and white in that sense. But I don't know. I think there's some clear favorites, I think, in the different brackets. I think it'd be really fun to see how Nicky Ryan does. Gordon's brother. I think it's his first time competing, and he's
purple belt still, right?
I really don't know if he's purple or brown. There's no secret about his belts. He doesn't pose
I
his
think
belts.
he's purple, but it might be just an age issue.
Yeah.
I believe there's still some arbitrary signaling marks in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu where if you're under 18, you can't be. I don't know if he turns 18 by the time of the tournament, but I think he's 17 right now.
Yeah, I don't think he does, but it's not like he's going to pose with his belt either. You ever seen him in a gi? I rarely see that shit. I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the whole Dana Hair Death Squad, and they killed the game in the beginning with heel hooks, but now they've revealed that that was just a setup that was exploiting the weakness of the game as it is at the current state. Yeah. But now they've been showing people that, they could compete in IBJJF rule sets that don't allow any of these types of ligament tears on the legs and still defeat people with classic BJJ with chokes and strangles.
Speaking of classic, like he's gonna be fighting like some legends, some old school guys that are
Cobrinha.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Man's been around forever.
Yeah,
he's
man.
Dominated that division.
A friend of mine from college has this great series on YouTube called Legend Diary, and he's got a great interview with him because that's his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu professor.
Oh, downtown LA. Yeah.
Is he downtown?
I think it is downtown. No, I think
he might have both. Who knows?
I don't know.
He's balling. I saw the documentary. It's like a mini interview documentary on him, and he grew up in Capoeira like until he was 16, pretty late.
Dude,
then got into
that
BJJ.
dancing stuff helps BJJ, man.
The rhythm, the movements,
the movement.
It's similar to
Hips.
I think Eddie Bravo's black belts that did breakdancing.
Salsa and shit, man. I mean, it's not salsa, but I'm saying if you get hip movement,
yeah,
it's gonna help.
It's the motion of the ocean. I think it doesn't guarantee you a spot
as a BJJ champion,
No,
but it doesn't
it
hurt.
doesn't hurt.
Any athletic background you have.
The yoga guys are pretty good usually. They come in for the yoga background.
There are football guys,
Gymnasts,
wrestlers.
you get all sorts of shit that can be good. It's athletic translations.
So there's also AJ Agazar, Gio Martinez, and Ethan Krelston in that division, the 66 kilograms.
Thank you for giving me those names.
There are other names listed. I personally don't know them as much.
There's my hot take too. I think that brings back my hot take of how 10th Planet's fallen behind
What do you think?
the other schools of thought in BJJ currently. And I don't know if it's because they're so.
When you say falling behind, what metric are you saying?
Just by who's winning the big tournaments.
You mean the top of the top, the creme de la creme?
I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say some stuff about how it's IBJJF rule set or all those other rule sets, and how how 10th Planet guys are usually EBI kind of rule set. Sure, I'll give you that.
Well, no, that's one thing, but I didn't mention that. In my head, I was thinking, I think there are different models of systemization and education, and I think maybe what you're pointing to is that at some of the higher levels, maybe there's the way that they're expanding is too quick, so some of the higher level coaching they haven't received it. But the kind of quick general plan to get someone untrained in BJJ to be really good at local tournaments, I think 10 Planet guys are everywhere.
No, for sure. There's a thing about being like meeting the criteria, meeting the bar, and then there's the people that win are the ones that are going over the bar. I think 10 Planet gets you to the bar faster than some of the other methods just because they have a no-gi focus, and if you're doing a no-gi tournament, you're going to have the guys that are more experienced doing no-gi, whereas most gyms have twice a week classes. You're not going to get the same amount of mat time. But I think that in terms of, they get the people to a certain level, but going over to the next level, and it could be your point about how there's too many of them. They like a brown belt can make a 10th Planet gym versus like black belts making 10th Planet gym.
One of the brown belts that was in combat Jiu-Jitsu Fight Night is opening up a spot just right now in New York.
See?
Interesting.
But
around the Dana Hair Death Squad and Marcelo Garcia's gym.
It's kind of like the telephone game a little bit, where you tell someone one thing and that person's got to tell the next thing. They're losing a little bit of jiu-jitsu with every expansion.
That's certainly one theory. That's if you think that it's not systematized properly, or if you think there's some rushing going around.
Oh, I think Eddie's system is very organized. I think he has they drill certain moves on certain days, and it's very technical and exact. But I don't know if it's that way all the way down the line. I don't know.
It certainly seems more systematized. It seems to defeat the critique that Ben Askren laid against most jiu-jitsu schools on the Joe Rogan Experience.
3 episodes, 3 Joe Rogan Experience shout outs.
Oh, they're going to be a million
more. We might as well get some sort of money back at some point.
I'd be down.
I'm down too.
Joe, you want to sponsor us?
I'm just saying, if we can get some love with 3 for 3.
Hey, bro.
Continue your points.
What's his name? Who's the British dude from Get Him to the Greek?
Oh, fuck.
Russell Brand?
British dude. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
sounds right.
that's the name, right?
Yeah.
Russell Brand said that Joe Rogan is the 800-pound gorilla in the room around which all other podcasts in this space kind of orbit.
Sure.
And I like that
We're the
explanation.
smallest little dot on the constellation. We're so far out. Anyway,
let's go to
You had a point though, and you didn't finish your point.
I did.
About Ben Askren? You were
Yeah.
there? You were there?
He systematized it.
Yeah.
Eddie Bravo's system is his system of teaching, and Dana Harris' system of teaching seem to be an organized curriculum. I'd also point to Hannah and Hiro, who have their online Gracie University and their academy as well. These systems seem to defeat the critique that Ben Askren tried to lay, that you teach 1 or 2 techniques and then you just spar the whole time, as opposed to instructing how to do a move and then heavy focus on drilling them from a position, as you would do in chess games that you play to prepare for a full chess match.
Right. I mean, I don't disagree with you, but the proof is in the pudding a little bit for me, and I'm just looking at the results, and I'm not seeing too many of those guys.
So, Cobrinha versus Nicky Ryan, who wins and why?
I mean, you can't even, they haven't even come close to each other, right?
Who wins and why?
Right. I think that it'll probably be points. I don't think either of them is going to get submitted.
That's interesting.
It's going to be some sort of advantages, or I forget how ADCC works sometimes, but and I think that I can't say his nickname well, but Ruben is going to be definitely on top, and he's going to nullify all of Nikki's stuff.
AJ versus Gio. AJ of Gracie Baja versus Gio 10th Planet.
They beef too, right? Like they got some serious beef.
What do you think? One of them trains heavy gi, says if you don't train gi, then you're not going to be good at jiu-jitsu. Hands down. The other one is no gi all day worldwide.
Yeah. And I think like one of them was a wrestler, so probably his experience with
With at least the takedown, defense, and offense.
Have they fought before?
I don't know.
I don't know. I think they have, but I think I'll probably say AJ as well, because he seems a little bigger. He seems like a bigger guy than Gio. I think Gio's like smaller, frame wise. But that's super interesting, and I can't wait to see who else they add. Like if Rafael Mendez is in it, I don't know if he's already in it or not, but if they're gonna invite him.
Is that Augusto Mendez?
No, Rafael is our jiu-jitsu guy. He's I forget where that is. I know that's a really well-known place. I don't know if it's in Santa Monica or not. I'm not sure.
So I actually don't know the rest of the guys at the 66. In the 77, the names that stuck out to me are Wagner Hocha, who's the first person in a combat jiu-jitsu match to actually TKO somebody. He slaps from mount.
I love that shit.
You slaps from mount. It's amazing that happened. And then Edwin Najmi is also Gracie Baja. Northridge is opening up Gracie Baja and Tarzana pretty soon, probably competing with Jean-Jacques there. And then Dylan Dennis, who just got suspended by the Nevada Commission and had to pay them a few $1,000s. Also a Bellator fighter and the jiu-jitsu coach of one Conor McGregor. Yeah. So those names stick out to me, and I think it's cool that Bellator allows their guys to grapple, because I've seen some other Bellator names on the list, but do any of these other names stick out to you? JJ Torres, Ross Nichols, Jonathan Satava, John Combs, Lucas Lepre, Oliver Taza.
I mean, obviously, Lucas Lepre is a legend in the game.
Talk to me about him.
He's got very old school jiu-jitsu. He's like been around for a while, and he's like got a lot of wins. Had some battles with I think Michael Lange.
Yeah, it says he's one of the invited people as opposed to the people who won merit based. Do you have any opinions on these kind of backdoor invitations versus?
Well, no, I think they give it to guys that are doing really well. You know, they give it to guys that are like doing well that year usually, or even like recently. They don't give it to just like name recognition. Oh, you've been there before. It's like they give it to them for merit as well.
And you don't think there's anyone getting it like past the prime of old achievements?
No, because they're all fucking good. At that level, like everyone's so good.
Respect.
I think Ross Nichols is a dark horse in that division. He's like really, really hard to pass his guard. He usually plays off his back.
Oh, he's a Roger Gracie guy?
Yeah, he's with
Roger Gracie.
Yeah. He's awesome, and he just is winning everything. He's dominating, and people can't pass him at all. Like he's like.
And you're talking about gi and no gi, or
no,
just no gi? Because ADCC is no gi, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a no gi thing. So he's fine in that way. I think he trains a lot of no gi. He's won a lot of Polaris and a lot of tournaments, and he's really good.
Edwin's trained RDA. As I said, Wagner Hocha's got his own gym.
Yeah.
And Dylan Dammit.
Focusing
on MMA recently.
Yeah, you know what I would
think
love?
of
It would be great. Speaking of Dylan Dennis, would be if like Marcelo Garcia came out of retirement, came back in the 77 division.
Oh my god.
Fights against his student.
Teacher versus disciple. That's some Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Absolutely, he would probably wipe the floor with Dylan.
Do you think so? You don't think he's past his prime?
He's only 37. He's not even that old. He just like stopped because he doesn't like people disrespecting each other. That's what he said in the interview. He's like, you just become too disrespectful.
How old do you think a grappler can maintain his grappling prime, as opposed to like an MMA fighter? MMA fighter, the lifespan seems to be shorter.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of sports, like like LeBron or whoever, like late.
Tom Brady's the example I think we got to think about with him winning the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, Tom Brady's 40 plus. But these guys are like solid even into their late 30s, early 40s. I don't know about grappling, just because you're grappling younger guys all the time.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more combat and like physically oriented than like the NFL or
It's a trade-off though between knowledge and endurance, probably.
Yeah. So
whichever you think is more important, to have more
I
knowledge.
think Corbina is
endurance.
even older than Marcelo, so like he won last year, you
Yeah.
know. So it's like I think Marcelo would do fine. I don't think he would have any trouble.
That's good.
And speaking of another guy who I would love to get in, if we skip down the line a little bit, and it's
Go ahead.
If Hodger,
We're not bound. I'm honestly not super excited about the 88 division.
Craig Jones!
Craig Jones is there. Zenda
It's so fun to
Ribeiro.
watch.
And Rustam Chizev is there.
Yeah.
Keenan Cornelius of D fame is there.
Yeah.
There are some solid guys there. I'm not mad. Is that what you wanted to jump to?
No, I was gonna
99?
say if Roger would just come back for super heavyweight and just.
Is that the 99 kilogram or the 99 kilogram
I think
plus?
he'd probably be plus. He's big.
Plus? He's
Yeah.
more than 220 pounds?
No, he's probably something around there. So it would be
Okay.
between the two of them.
He
But
doesn't get cut?
he would absolutely go for double. He would go
Yeah.
for absolute afterwards. And
Yeah.
It would be great to see him battle Buchecha again.
That would be phenomenal.
Monster.
And he's not in his 40s. He had a full MMA career.
He's late 30s as well. It's him and Marcelo. And
Yeah.
everybody, they're all around the same age. They have one last go at it. Go for it because ADCC is once every 2
Yeah.
years. You know, so it's
When Crone was fighting in the UFC, they brought out this weird statistic that a Gracie member hadn't won in the UFC
Yeah.
since 1994,
Yeah.
and it was a little misleading because there are obviously other major MMA promotions where they have one in.
just UFC.
Yeah, and so Hodger had his loss in the UFC, but he won elsewhere, and so it's weird to think about. You know, they were kind of putting down that name, but this is their territory, right? This is. I know it's the Abu Dhabi Combat Club, but this is really. It's the Jiu-Jitsu guys are the ones who win more, right, than other grappling.
Of course.
Not as many sambo, not as many sumo, not as
I
many
think
American
it's
wrestlers.
exclusively
right?
Jiu-Jitsu this year so far. There hasn't been one from another thing.
But is that again? Is that by merit and invitation? Is it or you know what I mean? Is it that backdoor deals didn't allow sambo guys?
Slowly, I think it's slowly that they're just not qualifying because there's the qualifications in place, and those guys are not going to qualify. They're not beating the BJJ guys.
Yeah.
And I think the BJJ guys right now, since it's like such a hot sport, they're more popular. Like, you know, like you can't find like a famous name a couple sambo guys off the top.
All
of
the
your head.
Dagestanis in MMA
Right,
right now.
but I'm saying purely sambo guys that don't
I
fight.
don't know.
You know,
The sambo combat masters.
some obviously some D1 wrestlers and Olympic wrestlers are getting noticed now, and they know they're getting popular. But those guys aren't going to come to ADCC.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know.
So since you jumped ahead and we're talking about the big boys, who's the most exciting, either in the 99 or the 99 plus kilograms of the people who've been announced?
There's just different styles in that one. Like
Yeah.
I would love to see what the hell happens with of that blue belt Nick Rodriguez if he gets
Oh yeah.
if he gets up
Also
against
from the Dana Death Squad.
if he goes up against someone like Buchecha who's just got like massive amounts of experience, 10 titles, whatever, like in just like traditional jiu-jitsu versus some like freak athlete. who
What's
happens
your
to, like,
random
be
guess
something.
or educated guess as to what happens in that?
I don't know if we'll even
situation?
run into that, but I think
That's new school versus old school, classic question.
I think that Nick is like dominating people that are pretty solid, but I think there's like certain levels to it. So I don't know.
There
if
are
he can
levels to
dominate.
this shit.
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
you definitely got to find out. Vinny Nagalesh and Rafael Lovato Jr. are both interesting to me because, like I mentioned Dylan earlier, these guys have just fought in the PFL and in Bellator. And here they are, still their contracts allowing them to grapple.
Yeah.
Do you think
I
that
think
if they're not
UFC,
focusing
it's not
as much, they're good
exclusive.
as well?
I don't think UFC is not that. You can probably get away with grappling in your contract, but it's something you have to negotiate for.
On
And
an
I don't know if
individual
you end
basis.
up losing money if you negotiate that because of insurance reasons or whatever. I don't know. But I don't think UFC has said no, you can't.
Well, certainly if you get heel hooked and you got a fight coming up,
Sure, of course. Yeah.
that's no bueno.
Of course, but like, how does Bellator? You know, Bellator just takes that risk. Because I think they look at it as more exposure for their fighters.
100%.
So like, if their fighters become more popular because they win a tournament like ADCC, that's a win for them. You know.
100%.
Yeah.
And I don't know a ton about the women, but one name stuck out to me, and that's Ryzen's best, Gabby Garcia. You know what? She used to be really huge.
She's
but
still really huge.
I've seen more recent pictures.
No.
Seems like she's slimmed down, that she's gotten into super good BJJ shape, you know, as opposed to just trying to be a bucket.
I have a question. The fights that she has in Ryzen, are they just open weight? Like, do they just allow her to
Certainly
weigh
when
weight?
she beat that older woman to death.
That was one of the only fights in my life that made me feel uncomfortable.
Let me ask you this before we even get into her grappling. I have no idea if she's a black belt. I'm sure she is.
I'm
She's
sure
probably
so.
not, yeah. But her versus Cyborg tomorrow.
God.
Open weight. What happens?
Open weight, open drugs, baby.
Oh,
I'd love to see that.
yeah. Let them juice, baby.
Oh my
You know
God.
how I feel about this. Let
No,
them juice.
honestly, if the MMA promotions could keep it clean and could have these people compete, you want to see the best fight the best. That's my principle.
Mhm.
So I would have open weight between her and Cyborg, Kayla, Nunes. I'd have all of them kind of
hype
fight
train,
each other.
This hype train, now we're really going off topic, but this hype train of Kayla Harrison, I think Homegirl has 3 fights. And
She's also a double gold medalist in judo.
Sure.
And
she has
huge, 155 pounds.
fights. I don't know.
Cuts to 155.
I just don't think she's like the next GOAT already at 3 fights.
I don't think she's.
And kind of tailor-made fights, like fights that she's supposed to win.
I don't see. GOAT is it's always a difficult conversation.
But
Right.
if you're saying you
You
put
have to talk about
Cyborg
those-
her and like this crazy.
Well, because it goes
fight-
back to your point about technique, right?
Yeah.
You have a different metric for technique. Do I think that make her being a judo champion makes her highly technical? Yes.
Yeah.
Is she one of the biggest women fighters on earth? Yes. Is she young and still in her prime? Yes.
She's
So
also
with
a lot
all
shorter than
with
the other-
technique, youth, and size, I don't know what you mean by GOAT, but I think she could beat 90% of people on the planet.
males and females.
Just females.
Clarifying it.
Yeah, well, there are biological differences there. But I would like to see that too, if they were down for it. They'd have to both be down
I
for
want
it.
to see her spar or something with her husband, the one that fought on the UFC card last night.
Oh, what's his name? I don't know.
Rocco Martin, Anthony Rocco Martin.
What weight class?
Welterweight.
Okay, so they're
But
probably similar.
fought at 3 or 4 fights at lightweight.
That's interesting.
155. Have them
Yeah.
go at it.
That would be hilarious. They probably do help each other if they're both fighters.
American top team.
You know, there's that Thai way of sparring where you lightly tap each other. So I don't think sparring wise for the strikes that would be out of the question. And then grappling, guys and girls grapple all the time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to be an issue.
Would be funny. Would be funny.
Any closing thoughts on ADCC before we transition to that halfway?
Um,
My favorite right now.
I'm just really happy with the selection so far, and I'm excited to see who's going to come next. I think we'll have even more hype as the date gets closer.
And we know all the people.
Yeah, and I'm very excited for it this year. Might even sign up for Flow Grappling.
Look at that plug. They're paying us too. So CJJFN stands for Combat Jiu-Jitsu Fight Night. If you look up hashtag CJJFN on Twitter, I dominated the hashtag. So you'll see a lot of my commentary there if you want more of the play-by-play. The big picture thing
The sad
I
thing
can tell
is
you,
you're probably the only one watching it, and that's why it's not going to become a
no, they have great views, man.
I hope so.
They have ABI
I'm-
before it transitioned to the Combat Jiu-Jitsu
Right.
Fight Night and Worlds. The EBI were some of the highest views of any grappling event, even higher than a lot of fighting events. It's incredible the numbers that he got.
Yeah.
Actually, Gordon Ryan was speaking critically of Eddie Bravo, who gave him all of these opportunities, because even though he was announced as a heavyweight fight, and there were a lot of pullouts in this event, he was supposed to be in it. Josh Barnett was supposed to be in it. Rustam Chisev, who we said earlier, was supposed to be in it. Verdun, all these dudes were supposed to be in it. They pulled out. But anyway, Yuri Shamos won the absolute tournament that they had, and it was a phenomenal tournament.
Probably one of the most active guys right now. Yuri.
Very active. He just fought Rafael, right?
2 days ago. Yeah.
Oh my God, phenomenal. And
Is it Rafael or Rafael?
you know he's American, so I go with Rafael, but he does jiu-jitsu, so Rafael. by virtue, I feel like he could go either way. Honestly, I'd have to ask him. He speaks Portuguese too, which makes it more difficult. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but Yuri's super active for sure. So Rafael's super active.
Yeah, but so Gordon Ryan and Verdum are going to they were announced as heavyweight. They had a tease kind of pose session. They're going to have a heavyweight match for the heavyweight title of CJJ.
That would have been fun.
But anyway, EBI had the highest numbers, and then they switched it to CJJ. So I'm not the only one, but anyway, there are a ton of viewers. You could see.
But are they
hashtag
losing? Are they
CJJFN.
losing some viewership because there's that traditional love for like old school jiu-jitsu? Like like they just want like that.
You mean in the gi? I mean,
Right? No,
the
but I'm saying
tradition
like,
is
is it
changing.
losing? Because even the EBI guys might be like, that's like too savage. You know what I mean?
So look,
like,
there's a pendulum, right?
right.
The pendulum swings back and forth, but over time, it repeatedly swings in one direction. So you have traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, then you have the improvements of Jugado Kano to Judo.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Brazilians moving it to the ground. You have Eddie Bravo, sometimes jokingly calling it the Mexican Jiu-Jitsu, but mostly 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, which says let's just do all these things, mostly in the clinch, without the gi, so it's more practical for self-defense and MMA. And then he believes that the next evolution is adding strikes. And my guess is that here, I'm going to say his name again, him and Joe Rogan, when Joe Rogan retires from the UFC, are going to start an MMA promotion. And they're going to have bare knuckle rules.
No cage.
They're going to have no cage. It's going to be like in a wrestling arena or a football. I don't mean a ring. I mean like how they have it in college wrestling, amateur wrestling, a huge stadium. And I think they're going to have no time limits or at least no rounds. I think they're going to make it as close to a simulated real fight as possible. And I think
It's a lot of
Eddie
guesswork.
is trying to get people accustomed to, hey, if you can do jiu-jitsu, how can you do jiu-jitsu under pressure with slaps? If you could do jiu-jitsu under slaps, could you do MMA?
Yeah, my point was not necessarily how it's going to extrapolate in the future and how it's going to turn out. Currently, is the thought process like very positive for combat jiu-jitsu from transitioning from regular jiu-jitsu, or is it like people are scared of it and unsure about
My
it?
man, you gotta do a poll, otherwise we're just shooting the shit.
No, I know. That's why,
Like,
that's
yeah,
why I'm
it's
saying
hard
you
to
were
know.
answering kind of like for a future scenario. I was saying I was more interested on like what's happening now.
Well, fans, holla at us. If you're listening, let us know what you think. He knows what he thinks. I know what I think. But we'd like to hear. Yeah, we'd like to hear.
And then did you have any more?
Just
thoughts
on CJJ, so we had Kevin Casey, who's a Hickson Gracie black belt, got heel
training
hooked.
partner.
Yeah, I've trained with him before. He's not necessarily my long-time training partner, but we've rolled a couple times. John Thor Blank, a 10th Planet guy. 10th Planet guys you said aren't doing well. This was a classic new school versus old school. 10th
In
Planet,
his own team's format. But
yeah, but 10th Planet versus Hickson Gracie, and the 10th Planet guy wins via heel hook. Then you have
And
Yuri
lost in the
Simões versus Steven Martinez.
Yeah.
Yuri wins that one in overtime,
Yeah.
which is the EBI format that you could say he's not used to
Right.
because he's a traditional guy. Then you have that traditional guy against 10th Planet, so another old school versus new school, and he won that one. So,
But that might just be that Yuri's a beast.
yeah.
Like
And-
I don't.
and-
Sometimes, as much schooling as you're gonna have, or as much as like you can be Dana Hare trained, if you run into a beast, you might lose.
There's a debate to be had that genetics, individual know-how, and strategy are kind of number 1 and 2 priorities,
Yeah.
and that the third might be your training and schooling.
Yeah.
But certainly those got to be the top 3 values, right?
For sure.
And then you throw in like age, strength and conditioning,
Yeah, and I think
and everything else
there's also like
associated
being in
with
your
it.
peak, you know. And I think Yuri right now is like he's peaking, you know.
What are the odds that you have him winning his division and then the absolute of
For
ADCC?
I think he's a definite favorite.
Yeah,
I think
wouldn't be a dark horse.
No, he's one of the favorites right out the gate.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's gonna go through Gordon. He's gonna go through, there's some tough guys.
Interestingly, he's a little shorter than them.
Yeah.
I think they might list him at 6. I'd have to look at it, but he looks more 5'11", 5'10".
I don't believe any
But
listing.
very powerful. Very
No, he's-
powerful from how I've
He's
seen
so
him
strong.
grapple.
He's so strong.
Yeah. So I think that's all I have to say about CJJFN, unless you wanted to add any more.
You know how I feel about CJJ.
Yeah.
I'm so uncertain. Please make me more certain. Let
But
me know.
you've watched it with me, so I know
I
you
have,
like
I
it.
have. Obviously I enjoy MMA, I enjoy violence, and I also enjoy jiu-jitsu, so I feel like I would enjoy it. But there's something, I don't know if I want to throw the term sacrilege, but I will. Maybe something happened
Go ahead.
with
If MMA is your religion.
No, if jiu-jitsu is your religion.
Jeez.